Good morning. It is time for just a word from the Word. Today's passage is a little longer than normal, but I believe it will speak to us today. I'm reading from the book of Ezra, chapter 3, verses 10 through 13, and I'm reading from the English Standard Version. Here's what it says. And when the builders laid the foundation of the temple of the Lord, the priests in their vestments came forward with trumpets, and the Levites, the sons of Asaph, with cymbals to praise the Lord according to the directions of David, king of Israel. And they sang responsively. That's a whole other conversation I'd love to talk about one day. Praising and giving thanks to the Lord, for he is good, for his steadfast love endures forever toward Israel. And all the people shouted with a great shout when they praised the Lord, because the foundation of the house of the Lord was laid. Verse 12. But many of the priests and Levites and heads of fathers' houses, old men who had seen the first house, the first temple, wept with a loud voice when they saw the foundation of this house being laid, though many shouted aloud for joy. Verse 13. So that the people could not distinguish the sound of the joyful shout from the sound of the people's weeping. For the people shouted with a great shout, and the sound was heard far away. I think several times, multiple times, about this particular passage in Ezra. Ezra had been amongst the exiles that went back to Jerusalem from Babylon to rebuild the city, and then Ezra made sure that the temple was rebuilt. Now, this was after a 70-year captivity in Babylon, according to the prophecy of Jeremiah. At the end of that 7 years, God allowed Israel to go back, those that chose. Again, that's a whole other story about who chose and who didn't. But Ezra was a part of the group that led the way, and they laid the foundation of the temple, and they were rebuilding the temple. And so Ezra, who was both priest and prophet, had it all set up. They were going to lay the foundation of the temple. They were going to rebuild the temple, and he was going to reinstitute the praise singing that David had instituted years and years before. And people were excited. The city was being rebuilt. The temple was being rebuilt. Man, there were people that shouted so loud. They were so excited about what was going on. And yet there was this group in the midst of this joyful sound that Ezra describes as just being heartbroken, because the temple that they saw in front of them was not the temple that they remembered before captivity. Their cry was just as loud as the cry of those that were rejoicing for the temple. So much so, verse 13 says, you couldn't distinguish between the two. It was just a really loud noise that was heard from a far away place. That begs a question. Why? Why did those people look at what God was doing right then and couldn't rejoice? Why couldn't they see the blessing of the Lord right in front of their face? They were thinking about the past. Now, some of you might be saying, oh, Sister Jan just watched Brother Gurley and she was all inspired by that. No, actually, this came out of prayer well before Brother Gurley this morning. The older people in the group were looking to the past and saw what was in the past and assumed that what was in the past was better than what was in the present. And they were just heartbroken. Y'all, you and I can get so caught up in the past, we can't see our present. We can also get so caught up in the future and hoping for what will be that we can't see what God is doing right now. Vision needs to be for today. Have there been good things in our past? Absolutely. Will there be better things in our future? Absolutely. But what about today? When's the last time that you and I stopped and looked at our circumstances going, God, I believe you for my future and I thank you for my past, but God, right now, right here, right today, look at what you're doing. Today's just a word from the Word. Look around. Ask for vision for today. What is God doing today in your life? Grab a hold of today. That's really just my word from the Word. Look around. See what God is doing right now. You don't have to wait for some future date to see the glory of God. Look at the glory of God in your life today. You don't have to look at your past and say, oh, God did so many great and wonderful things back then. Yes, he did, but look at what he's doing right now, right here in you, in your life, in your church, in your family. Today's just a word from the Word. Have vision for today. You'll be so much happier about today. God bless you. Have a beautiful day. Lord willing, we'll see you tomorrow morning.